Hey folks, this is Dana with Stimulated Boredom, and in this video we're going to be reviewing the new Kindle Fire from Amazon. It was released on November 15th. I was actually going to do a video a little bit earlier, but I wanted time to play with my new Precious. So I spent a couple of weeks with it, kind of going through the ins and outs, and so in this video we're going to be covering basic, intermediate, and advanced options and features. I'm also planning on doing a couple of tutorial videos for those of you who are hanging on my every word, and teaching people how to sideload apps for those who are not currently in the Amazon App Store, don't tell Amazon, as well as docs and music and movies for offline viewing. But primarily we're going to take a tour of the device, go through all of the different features, everything from book reading to streaming video, and looking at apps in the new Silk browser. And then from there we'll do a quick little Q&A at the end because I had some listeners who submitted some questions, and then I'll kind of give my final thoughts. Now, I'm not planning on comparing this to the iPad. Quite frankly, I think a lot of tech bloggers sound like idiots when they compare a $200 device to a $500 device and pretend that they're the same thing. So without further ado, let's get started. We'll do a quick tour of the device, the new Kindle Fire from Amazon. And here we have the Kindle Fire. What I'm going to do is kind of give you a quick tour of the device overall. As you can see, it's a nice 7-inch form function, so it's comfortable to hold one hand. You can actually hold it in the palm of one hand or just simply rest it on your palm, which makes it a lot easier in terms of reading, whereas like an iPad or something would be a little bit more cumbersome, which I also do own an iPad, and it's one of the reasons why I was attracted to the Kindle Fire. So the first thing you see is you've got this great 7-inch display. It's actually Gorilla Glass, which is very resistant to scratches and any kind of damage, but I do recommend using a case if you're going to put it inside of any kind of book bag or anything along those lines, or a purse. Outside the device, you'll notice that there are no physical buttons. You actually have two speakers along the top here. Again, nice and slim. And the only button that you have is the power button. You also have the micro USB. That's for you to charge the device, or if you want to connect it to a computer to sideload music or documents or other applications and so forth. And then, of course, you have a headphone jack. But beyond that, it's pretty sparse in terms of design. In fact, if anybody's ever seen the BlackBerry Playbook, it's very similar. In fact, it was made in the same factory as the BlackBerry Playbook, so it has a very similar design. If anybody's played with it, this is actually a little bit thinner in terms of the screen as well as the width of the device. And then, of course, on the back, it says nice Kindle and a very nice kind of rubber backing that makes it very comfortable to hold, doesn't feel like it's going to slip out of your hand. And then, of course, Amazon branding. So that is a tour of the device. One of the first things I noticed when I took it out of the box is it has a very nice weight to it. In fact, you know, if you want to bludgeon somebody to death, this probably would be very good for blunt force trauma. But it doesn't feel cheap. It feels has a nice weight and it's kind of heavy. So you don't feel like it's very dainty or anything along those lines. And then, of course, the screen construction and device itself feels very tight. Nothing feels loose. It doesn't feel plasticky like I've noticed with the Barnes & Noble Nook. So that's one of the first things I noticed. It just feels nice. It feels like a man's device. But ladies will like it too. So the next thing we're going to do is actually go into the device itself and go through some of the features. All right, so in terms of the specs for the device, you're looking at a 1 gigahertz dual-core processor with 512 megabytes of RAM. There's about 6.5 gigabytes of usable memory. The device actually comes with 8 gigabytes, but you have to allot about 1.5 gigs for the operating system. Then, of course, with the weight, the build, and the Gorilla Glass, which I covered previously. Now, a couple of things that are missing noticeably. There is no Bluetooth. There's also no 3G radio, which is never going to be free like it was on the previous Kindle, simply because this is a full-functioning tablet, so therefore the data that would be required would be far too much for Kindle to offer for free. If they did include a 3G radio in a future Kindle, which I'm sure they're working on. In fact, there's reports that they're working on a 9-inch and a 10-inch Kindle Fire, that if they included 3G, you would be probably paying for a data plan. There is no camera. There is no GPS. This is a purely consumption device for Amazon content. Now, obviously, you can get all kinds of other content, but Amazon wants you to stay within their own ecosystem, and I'll kind of explain the way that they did that. Now, on top of that, the entire device was built on Android Gingerbread 2.3. This is a customized skin, so to speak, so it decidedly has a very non-Android feel to it. For those of you who have an Android phone, and Amazon intended it to be that way. They wanted it to be a purely Amazon experience. So one of the things that I'm kind of disappointed it wasn't included was Bluetooth. I have a wireless speaker. In fact, many of you guys might have seen a review I had done on the Bose SoundLink wireless device. And in terms of just watching movies or listening to music if I'm surfing, I don't necessarily want to be tethered to headphones or have to plug it in. Now, of course, you can plug in an auxiliary cord and plug it into speakers. That's available, but again, you're tethered to a device as opposed to the wireless streaming. So that was kind of a disappointment as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure it'll be in a future edition. I'm not really sure why they didn't include it, but I'll keep my griping to a minimum. So overall, many of you guys have probably seen from other review videos, this is actually called the Carousel. Now this brings up all of your recently viewed and used devices, whether it's books, music, etc. Oh, Bobby Bowden, go Knowles. And continuing through. Now this is very perpetual, so if you are visiting a website, if you launch an app, it is always going to pop up in this carousel. As you can see, it's very snappy. In fact, just recently they came out with a new firmware update. When it shipped, it updated to 6.1, and in recent days they updated the firmware to 6.2, which fixed some of the performance issues. One of which that I've noticed is this carousel. Before it was almost too touchy, where it seemed very hard for you to stop on the app that you wanted to launch, and now it seems a little bit slower, a little bit easier to manage. And then of course you have all your apps, whether it's magazines, graphic novels, comic books and things like that, Facebook, etc. Then along the bottom you have your favorites. Now you can actually pin apps and books and even websites, I think. Actually, I'm not sure about websites, but I know you can pin apps and magazines and things along those lines to your favorites. Now this is not all of the apps that are included on the device, but these are ones that I access often. So I pin them to my favorites so I can get to them quicker. So as you can see, I'm reading The Watchmen, currently reading a book through the Kindle store. Obviously it supports Hulu. You'll also notice that it supports Netflix, which I'll take you through that when I do the video review so you guys can see how quickly it streams, different RSS readers and so forth like that, so you can pin your favorites. Now if I want to move it, I can just simply long press. Those who are familiar with Android will be, well, quite familiar with that. And then if you want to remove it, you can long press again, and it gives you options. Remove from the favorites, or you can actually remove from the device. Now that's where we get into the cloud player and the cloud storage. Now, as I mentioned previously, it has about 6.5 gigabytes of usable memory. Then that's not normally a lot of memory when you look at iPads and the Zooms and the Galaxy tabs and so forth like that. What Amazon wants is for you to kind of start to condition yourself to store things on the cloud. So for instance, if I buy a bunch of books, which I have on my previous Kindle, I have a Kindle second generation, which I love, and I plan to continue to use for reading, because I'm not a big fan of backlit displays when it comes to reading books. All the books that I purchased previously were saved in the cloud, and I can download them, which I'll show you in a little bit, as well as apps. In fact, I'll bring that up right now. There's different options, cloud and device. So these are all apps that are currently stored on my internal memory on the device itself. Then if I go to cloud, you'll notice that these apps that have little arrows for download are apps that I've purchased or have available to me, but I didn't want to install them directly on the system memory because I'm not actively going to use them. For instance, like ESPN Score Center, college football season is basically over, and so I don't really have a need to check any other sports because I only care about college football. But beyond that, you have access to all these. Now, another cool thing that Amazon does is offer a free app a day. So if you see an app that you think you might want to use, you can take it when it's free, basically download it when it's free, save it to the cloud, but I'll get into that when I get into the apps and so forth like that. So overall, it's a very snappy device. I'm sure because Amazon wanted to keep the price tag at $200, that in fact Amazon has reported that they are actually losing money on each of the sales of the Kindle Fire. So you're basically getting it at cost, but they're expecting to make up that difference by you purchasing services and apps and videos. It also comes with a free 30-day Prime membership, which gives you free 2-day shipping, as well as discounted next-day shipping for $3.99 instead of roughly $20 for next-day shipping, which is huge for me. But it also comes with the Amazon On-Demand video and the Instant Amazon, which allows you to stream thousands videos and TV shows, movies, etc. for free for only $79 a year. So you get that for free for 30 days. If you want to continue it, it'll charge your account. If you don't, which I highly recommend that you keep it, just because you're going to find that you want to use it because it's such a great deal, you can, of course, cancel if need be. But in terms of the hardware, I haven't had any issues in terms of lag. It's very quick and snappy, as I mentioned before. I'm sure a gigabyte of RAM is going to be included in future Kindles, but for what most people are going to use this for is kind of an entry-level tablet device, those who were never going to spend $500 for an iPad or didn't want to justify it, especially in difficult economy. This is a great device in terms of what you're paying and what you're getting, which I'll get into that in my closing thoughts. So from here, what I'm going to do is take you into the different features and silos, which are these sections across the top where it says newsstand, books, music, video, docs, apps, and web. I'm going to take you through each of those in terms of how comic books look, how books look, the different options, stream some music, stream some videos. I forgot to download docs, so I may not be able to give you an example of that. Then, of course, looking at apps and pulling up other features that are on the device. So we'll go ahead and do that now.